the perfect Pentecostal church meeting. The main idea of this talk is how the Ephesians 4 leadership, the apostles, the prophets, the teachers, the preachers and so on, the evangelist, are to build up the body, and in the church meetings to build up the body by enabling the body to exercise the Corinthian 14's gifts. I would maintain that this is pretty well what you do see in revivals, the gifts being exercised in order with a recognised spiritual leadership, and that this revival in the first century and at other times, Smith Wigglesworth and the Welsh revival and various other places and times and peoples, is the normal state of the church. So that, to sum up this part, Ephesians 4 leadership, the apostles, the preachers and teachers, exist in a church meeting to enable Corinthians 14 to occur. Now, those of a certain background will think Corinthians 14, that's where the Apostle Paul rebukes the church at Corinth for an excessive and disorderly sense of tongues. And you might take that as your prime evidence as being against tongues being expressed in the church. But hold on. Amidst that rebuke, which, is there, they were excessive. They were excessive. We need not be, is the point. They were just burbling on in all manner and means with no shape nor form. It did not appear to be useful to the church. And the gifts are designed to be useful to the church. They are given to the church. And so he tells them, along with the rebuke, he then promptly tells them in Corinthians 14 there, the right use. Let, he says, and this is the key allowance, let there be, 2 or 3 who speak a tongue. Let there be 2 or 3 interpreters. Let there be 2 or 3 who prophesy. Let there be 2 or 3 who give a word of knowledge or a word of wisdom or a word of healing or some such thing. And then it follows, he doesn't go on to say teaching, but let there be 2 or 3 who give a teaching. 2 or 3 men give a teaching. Let 2 or 3 give an exhortation. Where this is a living situation. He hasn't listed absolutely everything. Also, you find in revivals that when people attend church, they attend early and they stay long, and you have to go back to the Old Testament to find the suggested or the God-ordained length of a church service. Now, the Catholics' church service is about 1 hour, and many of the clerical collared sacerdotal churches have this type of length to them. Not so much in modern times, but in the days where French priests were paid by the Catholic Church or by donators to say a mass for the departed, 10 requiem masses said in honour of Monsignor Buxton or something like that. They would rattle them off in half an hour. You know, they could really speed up because it was a form that was repeatable and go on. But not so with the people of God. In a revival, they will often meet all day. This may be a bit excessive, but people will come and go to attend to family affairs, business affairs, or other necessary things. You know, if their goat is fallen into the ditch, things like that. Or word comes that, you know, someone needs to be picked up at the airport, or that kind of thing. You know, so a third part of the day is mentioned in the Old Testament. That's 4 hours. And this is the kind of keenness for the things of God. And most of the meetings are worship. They just worship, and they never tire of worship. When you think of it, do the children of God who already believe, and most people who turn up at church are already believers, are they not? You know, you have 1,000 people come to a church, you know, 950 of them for sure will count themselves as believers, as ongoing believers. They've been in church for 6 months, a year, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. You know, they don't need to hear a gospel. They don't need, in a way, to hear the good. They know the good news. They are the good news. We need to be built up in the further things of Christ. You know, a more nuanced, a more elaborated, a more intelligent Christ. Now, this doesn't mean big, long, boring lectures. Far from it. I would prefer myself that there be no overt teaching, apart from these, you know, let 2 or 3 have a song, let 2 or 3 give an interpretation, let 2 or 3 prophesy, let 2 or 3 have a teaching. You know, brief, short, 5-10 minute teachings and that kind of thing. You know, I feel the Lord is showing us now at this time with the earthquake or whatever, that he is shaking the earth and so on and so forth. That would be an appropriate type of message, possibly, you know, a teaching from the scriptures, so that a church member prayed up. See, and all this, that's about 18 or 24 people in a meeting. Now, all of this encourages all the believers all the time to be prayed up, to be full of prayer, to have a disciplined prayer life. And we are disciples, amongst other things, believers, the elect. We are disciples. So this 4-hour meeting, 18 people is not too many. And it could be another 18 people that the Spirit selects or prompts. You know, some overlap. But I would suspect if it was constantly an overlap of the same 18 people, you know, that this was a jack-up, an organised kind of denominational buzzball thing, you know, not of great interest to me. If it was overly organised, if the Ephesians 4 component was too strong and the Corinthians 14 component was too weak, frankly, I'm not interested. That is not a work of God. And in fact, going to church for many people was an experience, and I can confirm that, of a diminishment of faith, not a building up of faith. Mainly because you have one man doing all the talking, and this occurs, this form, this pagan form, this hierarchical form occurs in every church, virtually every church. There's almost no exceptions. And the most beautiful meetings you go to often are, say, prayer meetings or seminar meetings where people are invited, Christian workshop type meetings where people are invited to take part. And this is God's interest, that all the believers take part. Because if you do not, or have the possibility of taking part, even if they don't actually step into the taking part action, it's because it's an inspiration. You know, he redeems our flesh and our mind as well as our spirit. And he has catered in his plan for all levels of our being, so that it's an encouragement to all of us to be prayed up, to be ready to give account in the church. And basically you have the church teaching the church, and the church is always more intelligent than any one member of it. And our process of selecting pastors doesn't mean that the pastor is the most intelligent man in the group. If the group was freely open, who is the most intelligent member in the class where Christ is the teacher? This would come forward freely and bubble up amongst all the 1,000 members, say. So there might be 5 or 6, 7, 8 candidates. It might move around a little. Some people, they've got a headache that week, and so they're a bit dull, or they haven't prayed, or they've fallen into sin, or they've been away for a while, or some other reason. So even that, the brightest person in the room may be. But studies have shown that no matter how bright the brightest person in the room is, the room as a whole, 1,000 people, is usually twice as intelligent as a whole than the brightest person in the room. So even if the brightest person in the room is pretty uniquely bright, and again I'm saying, well, our process of selecting pastors doesn't guarantee that the brightest person in the room is the pastor. So we may have one of the lesser lights dominating brighter persons than himself, thus quenching that information. And if he's using the microphone all the time, only allowing people that he feels friendly with, it's putting a lot on one man. Let's have released the spirit of the whole meeting, of the Holy Spirit. He's whole, and the Spirit is given to the church, not to the pastor or just the leaders. The leaders are there as servants. Well, let them actually serve and be seen to be serving at the meetings where they step back. Occasionally they take part, yes, but not always. Like you have the open microphone situation. And so you have 5, 6, 7, 8 people speaking at an open microphone. And this seems like a version of Corinthians 14 that I'm talking about here, but it is not really, in that 2 or 3 of these people will be some of the leaders who normally have access to that microphone anyway. So their input at that point is rather superfluous and somewhat obstructive, a little bit intimidating and domineering. So I would just allow it. I'd say if you normally have access to the microphone, shut up. Don't keep quiet. If you spoke last week, perhaps don't speak this week. Some sort of guidelines like this could be built in so that it's not disorderly, that it's beautifully modulated, so that the entire church is encouraged to pray, to be ready, and to take part. And then you probably will have revival. God bless you all. Thank you. Okay.